Hey, Lane Sebring here. This is Preaching Donkey. Recently, I did a video about how to avoid putting off sermon prep. And I talked about how it's important to set imaginary deadlines and also to have external mechanisms to hold yourself accountable to the deadlines that you set. If you want to look at that video, it'll be at the end of this video, and you can also check it out right there. But I got an interesting comment and a question on this video that I want to talk about right now. And this is from Joshua. He commented, "I appreciate these words, but what would your advice be to pastors who pastor old-fashioned churches that have 3 preaching services a week that don't have an entire week to prepare one sermon?" This is a great question because I tend to think in terms of the weekend worship service, right? So you've got one sermon that you might preach multiple times on Sunday or multiple times on Saturday and Sunday, or maybe you're just preaching it once, but you're basically focused on preparing one sermon a week. And then I would say even from there, if you're the lead pastor, you shouldn't be preaching every single week just because you're in town and you can. You should give some of those weeks to other people, give yourself a break, keep yourself fresh. If all you have to think about all week is getting your sermon written, it can become all-consuming and other things can suffer. So not only do I think it's a good idea to only preach one sermon a week, even if you preach it multiple times, but I think it's a great idea to take several weeks off a year. So if there's 52 weeks in a year, I think you should be preaching somewhere between 40 to 45 times a year, and then the rest is taken up with you being out of town or allowing guest speakers or other people on your staff. So here's the question. What do you say, or what would I say to the pastor who is at what he calls an old-fashioned church, his words, that has 3 preaching services a week? So I'm guessing this means Sunday morning is a unique worship service that's different than Sunday night, and then Wednesday night is a unique worship service that's different than both Sunday night and Sunday morning. So basically, you're putting on 3 worship services in a week at 3 different times, 2 of them being on Sunday. Now, that's the way I grew up. It was very common back in those days, and in a lot of churches, it is still the norm. But if you are preparing 3 sermons a week, it is incredibly challenging to make all of them quality. Some people can do it. And I know, because I've talked about this before, I know that there's going to be people who will comment and say, I preach 3 times a week and I have for the last 25 years and I'm awesome at it. And that's great. If that's you, then awesome. But here's somebody who's asking me, what would I say to this person? My best advice here would be to work to change the culture at your church so that either 2 things happen. And I'm going to give you 2 options that I think are your best options. And I'm going to give you the easier one first and the harder one second. So the easier one is this. If you keep all 3 services, so I'm just assuming it's Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. If it's not that, then I'm sorry, you can correct me in the comments. But if it's Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and you're going to keep those, let's just say that you're in a church where you're like, look, we ain't getting rid of our services. It's just, this is the way it is. Hate to break it to you, but and it ain't happening. Then the easiest option is to do this, to make each experience somewhat different than Sunday morning. So let's just say that, and there's another part of it too, which I'll get to in a second. But let's say that Sunday morning is your straightforward worship service, right? You're gonna put the best sermon together. Because here's the thing, you and I both know, if this is you, that your Sunday morning sermon is the one you give the most attention to and spend the most time on usually, because there's the most people there. It's the standard time. You don't want to put all your eggs into the Sunday night basket and let Sunday morning suffer. So what happens is there's kind of this pecking order between Sunday morning is the priority, then we're all tired and we show up for Sunday night, right? And then Wednesday night is way low on the priority list. So we're already kind of doing this, but what I'm saying is if you're going to keep it, then let's change the way that these services are done entirely. So maybe Sunday morning remains the same. It's still a worship service, but then Sunday night, you can begin to transition that into more of a Bible study. And then maybe you can move it so that it's not just a worship service where everybody is in the room, but maybe everybody starts in that room. You have some singing, but then people split off into different Bible studies that they select. And so now it's not just you preaching a sermon, but it's multiple Bible studies happening at your church on Sunday night. That's one option. The other option is if you keep it a worship service, then work towards someone else preaching that service most of the time. So if you have an associate pastor or a youth pastor, or if you have a key volunteer who really loves to preach or teach, then you can kind of do both, where you make Sunday night more of a Bible study, less of a sermon, and you allow others in more. So one option is just change it where you're doing more of a Bible study, less of a sermon, where maybe it can take less prep. If maybe you're using some pre-written curriculum, or you're just going through a text very kind of linear, and it doesn't require the same amount of creativity and outlining and pizzazz that you would bring to a sermon that you're preaching, but make it more of a dialogue, make it more of an experience where you are guiding people through a Bible study. You can either do it that way, or like I said, bring other people into it where you're basically phasing yourself out of Sunday night. You're still there, you're still present. Maybe you still give the welcome, maybe you still give the close, but someone else is responsible for the content. And you can phase this in. You don't do it overnight, because if your church is really old-fashioned, then they're going to expect the preacher is there and he's preaching. And you have to phase this in. My wife read a book once written by a pastor's wife. There's a whole chapter called Move the Piano an Inch a Week. And the idea was the story was that this woman wanted to move the piano, and that was just anathema to this church. They didn't want her to do that. So she moved it an inch a week until eventually it was on the other side of the stage where she wanted it. So, kind of think about that, right? You don't have to necessarily come out and say, everybody, we are changing things, because that could cause interruption. But maybe you introduce a guest speaker, or you say, hey, tonight we're going to listen to our youth pastor. You see how that goes. This gives you an opportunity to equip the saints for the work of ministry, for the building up of the body of Christ. There's an opportunity for you to teach the church the way that you want this to be, that you're not just the one dispenser of all sermons, but you're an equipper of the saints for the work of ministry. And so you're going to equip these people to speak. And so it's not always on you. You still mostly do Sunday morning, and then you have people doing Sunday night. Now, let's talk about Wednesday night. If you do Wednesday night or some kind of midweek thing, definitely don't make that a preaching service. I would aim for that to be prayer, Bible study, or both, some combination of those two things. You do not need to do a third worship service. It becomes overkill. At some point, people have to soak in what you're saying. They have to be able to take the application and use it. So anything that you do throughout the week, if you do if you're going through one series on Sunday morning, something entirely different on Sunday night, something entirely different on Wednesday night. Now people have 3 different sets of sermons in a week. And you know as well as I do, you have your biggest attendance on Sunday morning, a little bit smaller on Sunday night, and a lot smaller on Wednesday night. So you might as well empower those people that come on Wednesday night to be your prayer warriors and pray for the needs and concerns of the church, and don't try to preach at them. Now, I know that this probably culturally is incredibly difficult, because if you're watching this, you're probably going, okay, this is really easy for you to say, but the people in my church have expectations. The church has been around 100 years. This is what they expect. This is what we've always done. So again, lots of vision and gradual. The only other option is you just stay in the situation you're in, and you're always tired, you're always frustrated, and you're always stressed about writing the next sermon, and it's never as good or as quality as you want it to be or as it could be, because there's just too many of them on your plate. So I would say the best way to tackle this is either change the format, add new speakers, or the best option is both, right? Change the format up and bring in different people so that you're equipping the saints and it's not the same thing on your plate every single week. One thing that obviously helps if you're preparing multiple sermons a week is my 21-day guide to creating killer sermons. You can pick that up at preachingdonkey.com/21 days. That's my gift to you. It's a 3-week, 3-step process that will walk you through how to create and deliver a message that's compelling and reaches out, grabs your listeners, pulls them in, and spurs them towards life change. So again, preachingdonkey.com/21 days. And again, I referenced this at the beginning of the video, but if you want to see the video I did on creating deadlines and having external mechanisms to hold you to those deadlines, you can click on that right there, and I'll see you inside that video. Otherwise, subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next video.